Hello, welcome to Universally Challenged, the podcast that offers cultural criticism from a biblical perspective. This week, we discuss the rings of power, wokeism in movies, and top it all off with a little Dallas Cowboy talk. Please sit back, relax, and prepare yourself to be challenged. This week, I thought we'd talk about the rings of power, and in case anybody doesn't know what that is, I think they're calling it the woke Lord of the Rings. Have you heard anything about this?
I haven't heard anything until you sent me that text the other day, and I haven't even had a chance to look at it.
Oh, so you didn't watch the trailer or anything? I thought you were the Lord of the Rings guy. So
I love the Lord of the Rings, but I'm kind of anxious to see what the woke version of it would be.
Well, see, I don't even know that it's really woke. We watched the first 2 episodes, maybe because I don't know. I heckled, and I made fun of spots where I thought it was going to be really woke, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Well, what's your definition for woke? How about that? Let's start there. What do you think woke is? What does it mean?
I can tell you what it originally came out as meaning. Back in the 60s, there was a Time magazine article written by a man, I believe his name was William Kelly. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But anyway, the title of the article was, "If You're Woke, You Dig It." And that was the first time that I know of that phrase showed up in culture. And basically what it was a word to represent the movement to help black people speak up for and to recognize social injustice and racial discrimination. And so really over the years, to me, that's kind of what woke has meant. Black Lives Matter picked it up again in 2014 and 2015 after what happened down in Florida, and then what happened in is it Missouri, where Brown, a black man, was killed by a police officer.
I believe that Ferguson.
Yeah,
Ferguson.
To bring light upon that again, especially police brutality, but it was focused primarily and specifically on social injustice and racial discrimination as far as it relates to the black community. But now over the last, 2 to 3 years, it seems like everyone who has a cause they're trying to champion has now used that word to progress a political ideology.
Yes.
To make their statement to be known. So I'm not quite sure how to define it. I know from a liberal perspective, it's a battle cry, and from the conservative side, because both sides can be woke.
That's a punchline.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's more of an insult than it is anything. So I guess I don't really have a specific definition of what woke is, but I think there's enough of us that are in that same boat where we can kind of see it when we know it when
you see it. Yeah, and that's the thing. I was trying to think of a definition for it, and off the top of my head, I know what woke is whenever I see something on television or in a commercial or in sports. I know it's what they would call woke, but I couldn't put it to words. And I looked it up, and the definition I got pretty much matches what you said. It says alert to injustice in society, especially racism. So I think you hit that in the head. I didn't know the stuff you're talking about the article in the 60s. Now, I've never heard anybody use the term until maybe a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe about the time Trump was in office. They say a lot of people became woke during that, and he's a very polarizing figure,
Sure.
So it stimulated different groups in society. Let's just say that. But I was thinking about if woke was exclusive to one side. Because I think when you say woke, you think crazy, leftist, liberal of some sort. And I was thinking it just means that they were basically not conscious of something and they became conscious of it. They woke up to something and they become very militant in that area. Not just that they're aware of it all of a sudden, but now I'm going to battle over it. But I was thinking the right kind of has the same thing. I'm sure you've heard the term red pilled. Yeah. Which, we all know. Well, I say we all know. I assume you've seen The Matrix. Yeah, and, you have the choice of you can take the blue pill, wake up, live your life, forget about it, or you could take the red pill and you learn about the Matrix. You learn that you become unplugged from the machine. But I feel like the The right slogan is a little, paints them in a little bit better light, because they're not willing to be ignorant anymore, basically, is what they're saying. They could choose to, if you don't take the red pill, you're choosing to be ignorant, is basically what they're saying.
Right.
So they're trying to paint it in a better light, that they're just a little bit smarter than everybody else because they're choosing to not believe what the media and everybody pushes in their face and stuff.
I definitely believe that the difference between the two is obvious. I do think, from the perspective of the right, that part of the aisle has become a lot more aware, a lot more socially conscious, a lot more socially engaged, a lot more discerning when it comes to how government acts and how it should react to the needs of the people.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that bothers me more than anything is this wokeism of the media.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can deny that the media is liberal driven.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not aspects of it that are still true to what journalism requires, the journalistic principles that came out. Because, journalism was meant, it's a blue collar, profession. But now all of a sudden it's become a socially elite profession. So we have too many in the media today who are trying to force their own agenda in order to lift them through the ladder of career success. And the thing that's bothering me, and I think others like me, is it's an easy way to portray reality when you don't have to maintain integrity. Mm-hmm. And the reason why you don't have to maintain integrity is because you never established integrity, and integrity was never part of the thesis of why you got into the business to begin with. And we both discussed this in the past about absolute power, how it can corrupt. Now, I'm not saying that the media has absolute power, but it has enough power. And the function of journalism, especially the media, is to inform. You can put your perspective on anything, and that's fine. We expect that. We enjoy that. Mm-hmm. But when it's strictly your opinion and not reporting the facts of the situation, you basically have taken accountability and threw it out the window. So when you don't have any accountability, you don't have any integrity because there's nothing to base it on.
Yeah.
You can just go willy-nilly, and if somebody has a problem with it, guess what? You're not accountable. We'll throw it away, and we'll come up with something a little bit more provocative the next time.
I find that interesting about the no accountability issue that you bring up, and I don't want to get too far off into this because this is kind of a different topic than what we're discussing today, but I almost feel like social media, if people are allowed to actually use the platform, really holds the regular media accountable. I think that's why they want to stop social media from being free, open platform to whoever wants to use it. And oh man, I could chase this rabbit for a while, but I don't want to get off on this because I feel like this is something we can bookmark and talk about another time. Is the wokeness in media, and I feel kind of like I don't even really watch the news anymore because I know it's a bunch of BS they're feeding me from both sides, and some people say one leans one way and one leans another way. I can't really tell the difference between, they're both trying to rally their sides and get people riled up and try to keep you. There's an alert every time you turn around.
True.
Breaking news. There's breaking news every second on there, and I don't know about you, but if I don't watch it, my anxiety level is way lower. I prefer to get my news from the real journalists, the people on YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where I get my news from. But anyway, back to kind of what we were talking about as far as like woke Lord of the Rings. I watched The Rings of Power. I watched the first 2 episodes. Let's be clear. By the time somebody hears this, there's going to be some transgender male elf have a baby or something on there. This is going to happen probably. But as of right now, I've really fairly well enjoyed it. I'm not going to say it's totally unpredictable. It seems to be sticking to the storyline. Of course, we all know where it's going to lead, so they have to point that direction because we know how it ends already. This is in the past. I don't want to go laying down the whole Lord of the Rings timeline. I don't have it here in front of me, and I don't know if I could do it. I assume that all the stuff that happened with the first Battle of Middle Earth and the Rings of Power and all that stuff was at least 1,000 years before the modern, give or take 1,000 years, something like that. But it's far enough in the past to where they can do different stories with it, and they can kind of lead up to how the rings were made. And it's fair to me. It's fairly interesting, and some of the elves that were in the later stories are there. Some of the dwarf kings and stuff that are mentioned in the later books, or in the getting this backwards, the earlier books about the later material. I'm just hoping they stay fairly true to the story. The only thing I've noticed so far, and this is not even a bad thing, it's just they definitely have a more diverse cast. Like, I don't remember there being anything other than white hobbits or elves in the other Lord of the Rings. Now, there could have been, and maybe that we just didn't see them. Maybe sometime in the next 1,000 years, they all become white. I don't know. Right. I don't know how any of that stuff works. And I hate the fact that just because they're putting black characters into a show, that in my brain has to go, oh, they're doing something, they're changing it. They're putting an agenda in there, because it shouldn't be an agenda just because they have a fairly diverse cast of characters. It just seems to be one of those tropes that they put into woke media and woke TV shows. I don't know if you've noticed any other examples of what type woke things they put into movies, where you can watch a movie and know this is something woke that's being put into here.
This is why I wish Bryant was here, because it would be nice to have a person of color, jump in on this discussion.
He's only got one color, and it's black, so I don't know. I'm a person of color too here, man. I don't have a lot of it, but what I got, I got.
My question is, I don't understand why there's not more people in the black community that are upset over the fact that this terminology seems to have been stolen now for anyone who has their own cause that they want to promote. Before it's and we have TV episodes that talk about the man. Here's the man taking this away from us again, and things like that. And to me, this is kind of an example of it. We have something that worked. It was championed by another group of people, so let's kind of ease in on that, and let's see what we can do and operate under that umbrella. Yeah. So that's why it always makes me suspicious when you see things like that. And I question the motivation, basically. Yeah. You know what I mean? Well,
for the record, I'm of mixed race. Mm-hmm. And what happens when Irish people and Scottish people get together?
It's a travesty. Yeah.
It's two totally different people groups here. But anyway, something else I was thinking about was some of the thing. This is what I don't like about woke stuff, is I don't want them feeding me an agenda. I want them to be creative and tell a real story that real people can relate to.
But they don't. That's the problem.
And that's true. And you watch it, and like there was especially the Marvel stuff, okay? Anything Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and those are all things that we'll consume at my house. I have a teenage son, we'll watch that type of stuff. But I was watching one called The Eternals, where it was basically like a Marvel's version of the Avengers. Not the Avengers. It was like a Marvel version of the Justice League, and they defend planets and whatnot. Well, it's getting to where I know the story before it happens, because the white guy I know is the bad guy just because he's a white guy. Right. And you watch the show and this is your bad character. Every other character in the group was of a different race, or they were homosexual or something like that, and they all have good intentions and motives for the most part. Every now and again, they might not, but the white guy is going to be misled, and he's the one that's going to be the bad guy. And I just don't like watching it and knowing right off the bat, okay, this character's gay, they're noble. I know even if they start out looking like they're the bad person, they're not. Right. They really have good plans or good intentions in what they're doing.
You're forcing a narrative that you are against. I don't know. Does that make sense? You're bringing your own point of view, despite a point of view that you totally disagree with, but yet you're representing it in the same way that you're arguing against, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, the problem is they're not making a creative movie that tells a real story. They're wanting to push their agenda
Right.
out there, and they throw something out there with it, and it doesn't matter if the story's any good or not. And to make my point, I don't really. Homosexuals exist, transgender people exist. If you have a story that has a real person that happens to be transgender in there, or a real person that's homosexual in the story, but it tells a real story, I can still be interested in that story. And an example, I don't know if you ever saw Dallas Buyers Club.
I saw some of it.
You saw some?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not suggesting you go take your children and watch this movie or anything, but it was a true story about a guy in the 1980s who was from Dallas. He was a rough character, rodeo guy. He got HIV and AIDS through doing, I think basically through prostitutes that were shooting heroin and stuff. They got it, they gave it to him. It was a fairly unique problem for him as a heterosexual guy, but he tried to get the drugs and stuff that was going to make him feel better or to help his case. Well, the FDA wouldn't approve most of the stuff that was being done, so he was going to Mexico, buying it, bringing it back across the border. He was against the law for him to sell it, so he was having people pay for club memberships. And they bought a membership, and with their membership, they got a certain amount of drugs every month to help them. And a lot of the characters in the show were gay, of course, because we all know AIDS pretty much ravaged homosexual communities, not necessarily straight communities. One of the characters was a transgender character, Jared Leto played, and it was a good movie. I'm not saying wholesome movie, but it did tell a real story involving characters that don't necessarily draw me out to watch movies.
Right.
And I would say that's a quality movie. But that they didn't make the movie with the intent of we're going to shove homosexuality and transgenderism down your throat, you know. So that would be, that's an example of what I'm talking about. And I don't know if you've heard about some of these other superhero movies they were coming out with. There was a Batgirl movie that Warner Brothers was making that they spent $90 million filming, and they decided to trash it. It was going to feature the first transgender superhero. I do not know if Batgirl was that character. I'm not actually sure. I don't necessarily think Batgirl was the transgender hero, but there was someone in there was going to be transgender. But Warner Brothers recently sold, and the company that bought them said, nope, I heard they're not only getting rid of it, but they're going to burn all the film and stuff. So you'll never be able to watch a version of this movie. Supergirl's another one they're cutting. I don't know if this is just because you would think $90 million in, you'd think, let's try to recoup some of this. But either they think it won't make anything, or I've heard that they're kind of in maybe not the best financial shape since they were just bought out, and they're maybe can go a different direction. It may not be for political reasons that they're not doing it, and financial.
Right.
It seems like a lot of these companies ignore their financial well-being in order to make this kind of, material, just because that's the type of material they want to push out there to everybody.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
When you were telling me about that movie and the plot lines being so obvious, I immediately thought about my wife watching the Hallmark Christmas TV specials.
So you know what I'm talking about.
And I don't watch them because, just like you said, I know the ending.
Yeah.
You can change the characters all you want to. You can change the setting. It's the same plot over and over and over again.
Rich white guy bad.
Everybody's a princess or related to some type of royalty. They didn't know it, and the next thing you know, they wound up. And it's just...
They come to town. They're a hockey player that's down on their luck,
Yeah.
and high school sweetheart. Oh, we hate each other. I remember what you did to me.
Had a bad breakup or a bad relationship.
My granddad said they always do the twirl, where the guy holds she spins around the dance floor.
And I understand the appeal. Don't get me wrong, because at the end it's a feel-good type issue. The point being, there is an audience for that.
Yeah.
And that's the issue with this wokeism. There is an audience, and it's the same story that gets put out there. They can change characters and, to a certain extent, maybe put them in a different situation, but it's the same storyline over and over again.
It's the predictability of it that kills me. And you're, you're not really catering to your audience because not they get rid of all the male roles and give them to women for the most part. If there's a woman in the program, she is better than the man. She's smarter. He's definitely not going to beat her in a fight. I can't remember the last time I watched a Marvel movie where a man beat a woman in a physical confrontation. That stuff ain't happened. That Black Panther movie, his guards are made up of about 95 to 115 pound women who are bald that you could kick over, real easy. And they're his personal guard. They're the toughest ones. They put their staffs on. Everybody's afraid. They got this one tribe of people. These dudes are huge. I mean, they're probably 300 pounds, 6'5". At the end of one of the movies, there's like 10 of these women fighting like 100 of these guys. And they're fending them off a wall against, I'm like, I've played Red Rover. I don't know if you've ever played Red Rover. Mm-mm. You never played Red Rover as a kid? Everybody holds their hands.
Oh, you're talking about, I'm sorry.
Red Rover.
Let somebody come over here. I'm sorry.
Whenever they called my name, it was a mistake, Scooter, because I had 45 pounds on those people over there, and you always look at the kid that's got the fear in their eyes, and you sprint that direction, because they're going to let go before you get there. If not, you're taking the whole line down with you, that type thing. And it's just... Physics will tell you these women cannot. And as far as I know, they never explained that these women had special powers or they, ate of some special plant that gave them super strength. But I just get tired. I just get tired of it.
It is tiresome.
And I don't even watch half the new stuff they put out. The She-Hulk stuff. Didn't watch that. Didn't watch the Miss Marvel stuff. And if they do put one out that has a male character that maybe I'm interested in, like the Loki one they put out. Me and my son watched that together. It's a bait and switch. There's a female Loki character from a different dimension that's in the show as well, and it's really about her and not so much about the real Loki person. She's better in just about every way, They're trying to hijack these roles, and I don't understand it. We may have talked about before about the last James Bond movie. I didn't watch it, but supposedly, spoiler alert, he died at the end of it, is my understanding, or he's presumed dead. And the word is they're going to replace him with a woman, maybe like a black woman or something. A white woman's not good. It's not far enough. We got to take it one more level, and probably going to be crippled as well.
Oh, nice.
If you really want to take it to the next level. And I was saying, where's your audience for that? And someone was telling me that, now women will come see it. I'm like, no, women don't watch James Bond.
They don't watch the WNBA. We already discussed
that. And men watch James Bond. So your audience, you just ruined your base for this movie. People aren't just going to go, James Bond, I'm going to go watch it. Well, first of all, it can't be a James Bond because it's a woman. I guess a woman could be named James. I don't know. But the next 007, whatever. I've probably driven that into the ground.
Oh, I like it. And I know we're going theology light today, but just let me point this out, then I'll get away from it. All this stuff you're talking about is definitely a secular view of feminism versus a biblical view of feminism, and it's gone awry. But speaking to your point about audience, who's going to come watch this? Hardly anybody.
Yeah.
But there will be people that say, "Oh, bravo for doing that."
Yeah.
Well, the movies are there to make money. So I think in some instances, a lot of this stuff will correct itself.
Yeah.
It's the issues and the points where it doesn't correct itself. That's what's scary,
Well, you'd think if they lose enough money that eventually they go, I want to make money, and I'm going to make something that, no matter which way you go, if you go really right wing with something, you're cutting out
you're doing the same thing.
Half the United States. Yeah. And you go really left wing with something, you're cutting out half the United States. But you know what? We all live in the same neighborhoods. And when it comes down to it, your neighbor needs something, you're there to help them. And we all have a level at which we can relate to each other. And both sides can watch something and tell whether this is true, whether it's relatable. And if you'll just tell a true story that's relatable to people, that has a little substance to it, and you're not shoveling your ideology down their throat, then people will watch it. And I think that was proven with Top Gun this last summer. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't go watch it. Wasn't a huge fan of the first one. I know they're saying it's the greatest movie ever made. The new one is. I seriously doubt it. But I like the idea that they're saying there was no real political stuff, you know. Of course, people that are always looking for political stuff are going to find it in everything that happens. You know, somebody blows their nose and they did it because they're right wing or left wing or, you know, whatever. I also saw just one last movie mentioned. Did you see the trailer for the movie Woman King?
I did not.
You did not? I didn't know. Since you watch sports, thought you might see the commercials and stuff. But it's based on, and I should have probably done some more research, but I tried to find the true story behind this, and I could not find the true story. But it's supposed to be a true story. The main characters in it are not real life characters, but it was about these women in Africa. I want to say 17th century, maybe 18th century, I don't know, but a king had a group of women soldiers that supposedly helped take over another kingdom for him. But my understanding was he got them together originally to hunt elephants. They were elephant hunters, and they had guns and stuff, I'm assuming. But there was like maybe 3,000 of them. And then they helped take part in taking over some other kingdom. I don't know how big that part was. Every story I tried to look up on what the true story was behind it was the people who made the movie talking about how they had very little information about these women, and they had to wade through the information, the pictures and stuff they had, because most of the information they had was taken by white colonizers, and they had to determine what was true and what wasn't to make a movie out of it. So you're telling me you took what little bit you did know and assumed that whoever took that information was a bad historian, and you know better without having any other history to corroborate with it. Right. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So now I know I can't trust anything out of this movie. You know, even if I wanted to see it, which I'm not the target audience for this movie, I'm not going to go watch it. It looks like it was filmed well. It looks like it's got a lot of action. I just prefer a little more realism. You know, if you're going to do a real story, make it a true story, you know, so. But I guess you didn't see the trailer for it, so.
No, but it does sound like a very Marxist approach.
It does. Well, yeah. And everything you were saying earlier about having people of color and then having non-diverse people, which are white people. Mm-hmm. So it's two groups of people. It's Marxisms. It's the oppressor and the oppressed. Sure. And that's the reason they do it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how this works anywhere that's not a Western civilization, because in the East they don't have white people really. I don't know what their version of Marxism is over there, how they're doing it. The Japanese, you know, don't like the Koreans, and you know, in India you have a crazy class system, but none of what they have is based on racism. And over here they take Marxism, turn it into racism, and whatever they can do to separate the classes of people. And to assume there's only two classes of people, the oppressor and the oppressed, when Oprah exists in this world, you know, or LeBron James, or there's plenty of wealth. There's a lot more wealthy black people than I am by far. I don't even fit into any of those categories. I'm sure I'm lower middle class, you know. Just based on my skin color, I'm an oppressor.
Well, to me, that goes back to the original point about what is wokeism. I think we say from the right, when we use that term, it is an insult. And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. However, I would also want to push forward the notion that wokeism, in a sense, actually belittles minorities. It questions their intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, it questions their ability to handle reality, and which is so far from the truth, it's ridiculous. That's why I question, where is the outrage from specifically the black community over things like this? Because this is really, even though in their mind, and people believe this, that's what's scary. You know, people believe what's coming out of their mouth for the most part. They don't understand and see how this is actually a form of racism in itself. And I just
I don't assume that black people can't get ID to get a voter's ID card. Like this is some crazy liberal white people
exactly
that are the most racist people on the planet who are like, they need our help. Well, why does that person need my help?
Sure.
Why are they not as capable as I am? There's a great video. I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube about this guy. He goes somewhere, I don't know if it's like Beverly Hills or somewhere in Los Angeles, and he questions people about voter ID laws and why it's wrong and stuff. And they're saying, well, they don't have DMVs in their community, or black people don't have IDs, and they don't have internet access and all this stuff. Nuts type statement. He goes to the Bronx in New York, and he's walking around. He's interviewing black people. He's like, excuse me, I was wondering, do you have identification? The guy's like, yeah, I got identification. He said, who doesn't have identification? He said, everybody's got identification. He goes, well, if you didn't have any, do you know where your local DMV is? He's like, man, right around the corner over at the DMV. So everybody knows where the DMV is, So, well, do you have access to the internet? Well, who doesn't have access to the internet? It's crazy. These people are like, what are you talking about? So it makes them look really, really racist and bad, to assume that a certain group of people, it's like, why in particular these people can't take care of themselves? It's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
But anyway, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble chasing that rabbit right there.
That's all right.
But I think we were going to talk about one more thing, but I think it's best to move on to the Dallas Cowboy talk, because if not, we're not going to fit it in this week, because I rambled a lot longer on that last topic than I planned on going. And
we could go even further on it.
Well, I could. Well, we kept
that's
it a little
so tasty about it.
Kept it a little broad. At one point, if I can get Scooter to watch the Rings of Power,
I will.
Okay.
Or at least I will watch like 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. At some point, if I can get him to watch it, maybe when it's all wrapped up, we'll come back and just do a talk about the Rings of Power and what our thoughts on it are, and just that type of thing. If I can say one thing about it, as long as you don't have little bitty kids, that would be afraid of like orcs and things like that, it was fairly family friendly.
Okay.
And so if you want your kids to watch it, of course, I would suggest parents watch anything with their children, and especially things that I don't know what type of stuff in the future is going to be in it. But, I'm all about watching things with my kids so we can talk about it afterwards as well, But anyway, so we're switching over to Dallas Cowboy talk. Next week is the season opener. I don't know. A Scooter might have some predictions for us here. What do you expect to see in this week's game?
Honestly, I'm looking forward to something like last season? Something to score about the same area. Maybe we're both Cowboy fans, but I think we both have a level head about us. I'm not picking the Cowboys to pull the upset, but I am looking for something like maybe 35-31 Tampa. Tom Brady pulls a rabbit out of the hat at the end of the ball game, or maybe Mike McCarthy does something really stupid at the end when the Cowboys have a chance to win it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, 31-28 Tampa Bay. But that's kind of where I'm leaning. Either way, I expect a very good showing from our boys.
Well, so are we the underdogs this week?
I think we are.
Yeah. Is that what the line's saying? Do you know? It is? Okay. I wasn't sure because I've heard Tampa Bay's had some offensive line issues as well. I know Brady he didn't even report to camp during
does he have to? I mean, this is not Allen Iverson, okay?
But maybe he comes out cold his first game. Maybe that Dallas Cowboy defensive line that's looked so good during the preseason starts getting to Brady.
Well, see, that's what brings me hope about this season. Everybody's dogging. And if you put the offensive lines together, I think you probably have a lot more critics against Dallas's offensive line. They're only bringing 11 linemen in the opening day roster. They don't even have a backup on the right side.
They got to keep all those defensive guys. Maybe Micah Parsons. I'm going to predict 3 sacks. No, I don't know.
Why not? And their secondary actually, on paper, it kind of reminds you of the Super Bowl '90s teams.
I don't know. Like I said, nowadays a good defense in the NFL keeps a team under 25 points. That's like if you can keep them under 25, that should be your game. That didn't used to be the case, but it's just offense. The league's built around offense now, and so a stud defense is going to give up 3 touchdowns and some change probably. At least that's the way it looks to me. Maybe it's only because I watch the Cowboys play every year.
Well, I went over. What's your thoughts on because Philadelphia's the sexy pick now, and I always love when they bring up that's the sexy pick because I know not to pick them. But what are your thoughts on the Eagles and because they did make some changes and they definitely on paper you would assume would be better than they were last year.
Well, okay, now remind me who's their quarterback now this year?
Jalen Hurts.
Okay, for some reason I thought they traded for somebody else. Who was it? I was thinking I thought did the Eagles make a big trade during the offseason for somebody big.
They got
or they
wide
picked up a big
and defensive help.
That's the thing. No, maybe I'm thinking the Redskins got a quarterback, right? Who'd they get?
They got Carson Wentz.
That's where I got confused. Carson Wentz, I think Eagles, but he's with the Redskins now. I'm sure eventually he'll be with the Giants, and who knows, maybe with us one day. Do the whole NFC East tour. Man, the Eagles are always picked to, I don't know what the deal is with them. Everybody buys their hype. When was last year they were really good? I guess they won the Super Bowl.
Of course, Wentz was with them, but Nick Foles was
Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. It's weird how all this stuff runs together now, man. I'm going to have to cut some of this because this is incoherent football talk is what this is right now. But they always want to pick one of those teams to be better than the Cowboys every year. To me, the Cowboys are the most consistent team in the NFC East, at least over about the last 6 years, maybe since Prescott got there. Romo and them, they would dominate one year and then the next year win 8 games. I don't know what was going on back then, but my thoughts on the Cowboys is wait and see. And I never want to make too big of a prediction until about 7-8 games in, which you used to call the halfway point. Now it's just almost the halfway point with the extra game. But right now I'm hoping that Dak Prescott takes us a step forward. I'm looking. This is where I'll feel better if Dak comes out and has a really solid game and doesn't have a lot of turnovers. But he tends to start the seasons fairly hot. And last year, if you based it in the first 6-7 games, he was all world. Our offense was just on fire. And if you watch the season, no matter what the numbers showed at the end, Dallas's offense really fell off towards the end of the year last year. I know some of that has to do with Zeke falling off as well. I just need to see what they'll do, man. Preseason, you didn't get to see any of the starters play. I keep hearing great things about Dalton Schultz and how great he's going to play this year. I like Schultz as a player. I don't know if he's like a Pro Bowler or anything, but I think he's a consistent good player. We'll see how he does. I kind of like the rookie tight ends they drafted this year. Ferguson showed up. It's going to come down to can that offensive line protect the quarterback? Can we do a good enough running game to keep the pressure off of our passing game and run play action? To me, Dak's always a better quarterback when he has the option to run. I know nobody wants to run him since he hurt himself that one time, but I think that was a fluke injury, to be honest with you. He's a fairly durable player. I think get him out there, give him the option to use his feet sometimes. It opens up more for him downfield.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the way I look at it. I want to see Dak run more, and judging by what I've seen by the offensive line, he's not going to have any other choice. He's going to have to run more. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? To me, I kind of look at it as a good thing. I would be more worried about the offensive line when it comes to the running game and how to establish that.
I'd be okay with him not having the run-pass option if he could make a decision and get rid of the ball faster. Yeah. He's got to, sometimes you got that first read, it's open, just get rid of the ball. Don't start looking at your other reads down the field for no other reason. Other than that, the defense, I'm excited to watch them play. I think most people are more excited to watch the Cowboys defense play this year than they are the offense. And hopefully they live up to the hype. It's just so tough to play defense in the NFL. I mean, you can get a team down 3rd and 20 and get a ticky-tack holding call
Illegal use of
on
hands or something like that.
on 3rd and 20
Illegal
and
contact.
5 yards automatic first
Yeah.
down. That automatic first down stuff needs to go away. I mean, it kills. Of course, I realize the defense will take advantage if it's 3rd and 20 and they know that it's only a 5-yard penalty for some defensive holding. They're going to hold to stop your people from getting open. I get that there's gamesmanship there and they want to eliminate that all the way, but till you can get perfect referees that don't make stupid ticky-tacky calls at the wrong moment in the game, that totally changes a football game.
Sure.
3rd and 20, 3rd and 25. Oh, he kind of got his hand, touched that jersey, his hand just a little bit, and first down. You know, what was all that work we just did the last 3 plays? You know, I don't know. That type of stuff kills me. But as far as their season goes, I should have actually wrote down the games they were playing, and we kind of. I'll tell you what. After week 1, we will sit down and we'll write down all the games they're going to play. And we'll make a prediction. Wins, losses.
Well, I got scheduled.
I do.
Well,
I want to put some thought into it after I see them play their first
okay,
game.
Well, let me. This is preseason, so I want to get this on board before it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through their schedule, and I went through the schedule of the other teams in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas by far has the roughest schedule, especially through the first 8 to 9 weeks of the season. That's when you get.
Oh yeah, I noticed early on it looked
we
heavy
got
and hard.
The
Yeah.
Bengals, we have, of course, Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
We have the Rams. Minnesota's supposed to be a whole lot better this year.
We beat them with a backup last year, by the way.
That's true. So I compared that with the Eagles for the most part because that's the sexy pick.
Yeah,
And going through it, trying to be objective, which is hard for a Cowboy fan.
yeah.
I came down and did the one, okay, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And initially I came up with out-of-conference schedule, Philadelphia 7-4, Cowboys 6-5. So at the end of the day, what does that mean? That means conference matters. And so just because of that, that's why I think Dallas has a chance to repeat as the champion. Do I think they're going to go 6-0 again in the division? No, I don't.
So
But then again, there's nobody in that division that's
could
going to
come
go
down
6-0.
to the Eagles versus the Cowboys in the division.
Absolutely.
Those games more than anything. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at it after the first game of the season, and when I have a little bit better idea. But I just know that first game doesn't even mean anything. You just never know. I can't remember if it was 97 or if it was 98. It seems like the Cowboys started the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were always a good team. And I want to say they won 31-0 that first game. They dominated. No, this was Aitman was still playing.
In 98?
97, 98. They started the season against Pittsburgh, and they just come out and they handed it to them. They scored at will. Their defense shut Pittsburgh down. They couldn't do anything. This was either 1 year removed from a Super Bowl. I want to say Cowboys had won in 95, 96, That next year they got beat by the Panthers pretty bad in the playoffs. And then that started that next season is what I want to say it was. And they come out 31-0. And I remember the newspaper come out with an article the next week, and it showed all the NFL teams like they were fish, and it showed Dallas like they were big fish, and that was it for them. Man, that season was horrible. I don't even think we made the playoffs that year. I want to say that was a 6-10 season for us, But we were all hyped. We were going back to the Super Bowl. So I just don't buy any of it. You don't know who the good teams are early on. Nobody's made adjustments to the adjustments that you've made in the offseason yet. And that's one thing. Dak always starts out the season hot. But teams start figuring out where to put pressure on him and where to slow him down at. And he just his game tightens up. He doesn't get rid of the ball quick. And if we don't have a good running game to back him up, we're in trouble most of the time. They claim he's gotten better over the offseason. Hopefully that's true. I'm not a Dak hater. I hope he's the best quarterback in the league this year. He seems like a mid-tier quarterback for me most of the time. And you can win with a mid-tier quarterback, but you better have a stud of a defense, and hopefully you got a good running game.
Yeah.
Because most teams that win have a top-tier quarterback. So that's my thoughts on that. And hopefully after the first game, I'll give you my predictions like Scooter just gave you his. We'll go back over his again next time as well. Not that anybody cares my sports opinion. Anything close? Got anything to close it out, Scooter?
Yeah, just go boys.
Okay.
Go Cowboys.
Go Cowboys. Thank you for listening today. We really appreciate you supporting our program. Until next time, as always, keep styling and profiling. UCcast out.